Hey, kia ora. Helen Brahms here, coming to you live from Surprise in Arizona. Hope you're having a super fantastic sparkling day. Welcome to Before the Dirt Nap podcast number 1772. Tonight we're talking about the long trailer from 1954 that we watched on Wednesday night, which was June 5th. And we're also going to talk about The Longest Day, which came out in 1962, that we watched last night on June 6th. And the reason we're talking about two tonight is because last night was just totally dedicated to the 80th anniversary of D-Day, the landings at Normandy. So we didn't talk any movie. Well, we kind of talked a little bit about The Longest Day because that was going to be the movie I was going to go and watch, but we didn't do a review on the long trailer. So you're getting it all tonight. And then you're going to find out what we're going to be watching tonight, which I don't remember. Hang on. Oh, yes, now I do. I just looked at my notebook over here. So the long trailer from 1954 with Lucille Ball and Desi Arnaz is a really cool, lighthearted movie. Lots of laughs. If you think of I Love Lucy, put it in a trailer, in a camper, in a caravan. Okay, so in New Zealand, the trailer that they have, the trailer camper, we call them caravans. So take Lucille Ball out of the I Love Lucy show with Desi Arnaz, stick them in a convertible vehicle that is towing a camper trailer. And that's basically it. Anything that can go wrong will go wrong. Everything from trying to read a map. In fact, my favorite line in that one is that she says to him, she goes, "Turn right there." And so he turns right. And she goes, "No, you're not supposed to turn right," because they end up in something. And yeah, turn right here is what she said. She tells him to turn right here. So he turns right. Now, remember, he's got his vehicle with a 40-foot trailer on the back, trailer camper on the back, a caravan on the back. And they're onto this little narrow road. And she goes, "Oh, you're not supposed to turn here. You were supposed to turn left." And he goes, "But you told me to turn right." And she says, "You didn't let me finish. I was saying turn left, turn right here, left." I'm like, wait, what? So, you had little mix-ups like this and everything from, and the whole idea was that this was a couple that was about to get married, and she convinced him that it would be, because he was going to be traveling with his work, that it would be better and they had to go to Colorado, was their first place they were going to. So her reasoning was, why set up a house when we're going to be traveling so much, because she wanted to go with him. We're going to be traveling so much. Why not just get us a trailer? We can live in the trailer. And so she'd already been looking at this and planning about it. And so she picks up this brochure. They have a look at this thing. They finally go to the RV/camper show to look at this trailer. And they get to this thing and they get in there and it's like pokey and tiny. And they're like bumping into people that are in there. And it's like, and so then they come out and there's one of the pictures I posted from the movie is them standing there going, it's like wide-eyed as they see the long trailer, all 40 feet of it. And so of course she's like more interested in, she's, "Oh, let's just go and have a look at it, shall we?" And they go in, it's this beautiful thing. They walk, there's actually got two exits, one at either end. You walk in the first one, there's a living room/dining room area. Then you step up because it's got a sunken living room area. Then you step up into the kitchen area. You walk through there, past the bathroom, into the bedroom, which has two single beds in, because remember, this is 1950s. People don't sleep together, which always amazed me on the I Love Lucy show, because if they don't sleep together, how did they have a kid? They sleep in separate beds. So, that's the impression that they give in those shows during that time. But anyway, so they have two single beds in the back there, and that's where the second door is. But it just becomes a huge thing. She says, "Oh," and the salesman there, and they've got lots of room there. There's lots of storage, and the salesman's talking with them, and she turns around and says, "Well, how much is it?" And he goes, "Oh, we don't need to know." And Desi's like, "We don't need to know how much this is." And she says, "I'm just curious." What's coming. So he's sort of like, "I'm out of here." And so she starts talking to him about it. And she says, "Oh, no, we can't afford that." And it was like $5,300 for this camper trailer. And this is 1954. And she's still like, "Oh, we can't do that." And he says, "Well, you don't need to put down a deposit of," and mentions the $1,700, and I think it's like $1,760 is what they would be looking at to purchase a home. is what their monthly payment would be. And then she's sort of like, oh, wait, we could do that. And so the next thing you know, she's convinced him it's only going to be an extra $10 more. We're not going to have to worry about power. We're not going to have to worry about, and she's going over all, not going to have the utilities. So we can take that money, we can put it towards this. Next thing you know, he's sitting there writing out a check for that amount. Then the guy turns around and says, oh, what sort of car are you driving? And he goes, oh, no, well, we've got to go check out your car. And the next thing you know, he's buying a car. Well, he can't just have just that car. It has to be fitted with all the braking system for the trailer and everything else. And then all this extra stuff gets put into the back of his car. And then of course, before the wedding, all the wedding gifts have to get put inside the trailer. And Desi Arnaz turns up with his clothes and his golf clubs and walks into pure chaos with all these women in there fitting all of these wedding gifts into this trailer along with all their stuff. His closet ends up being a rail that's in the shower that he has to take the clothes out every time he wants to have a shower. And the shower is a really weird setup. But this just becomes a comedy of errors as they drive along and they get used to driving this thing. And he's like terrified of driving this thing because it's always got to be the trailer brakes first, then the car brakes. And yeah, he has to learn this whole new way of driving. And they just have a lot of adventures, a lot of fun. There's a lot of good laughs in it. It's just one of those really good, feel-good comedy movies that, like I said, anything that can go wrong will go wrong, including her when she decides that she's going to save time by, an hour before we're due to get to wherever we're going. We'll pull over. I'll get in the trailer and start cooking dinner so that when we get to wherever we're going, you just got to put the jacks up, come inside, and dinner will be ready. Just put that picture in your head. Lucille Ball in a kitchen cooking while the trailer's moving around and jumping and driving and everything else. And then she decides she's going to pick up these rocks as she goes. And we're not talking just little rocks. We're talking rocks, big rocks, like about this, this size rocks that she's collecting. And she puts labels on each one so that she can remember where they got that rock from, and it'll bring back the memories of their time at that place. And I'm just like, couldn't she just go for something smaller? No, she has to go rocks. And then, of course, they're coming into Colorado where they've got to go up over the mountains. And so, of course, he's sort of like, you're going to have to get rid of these rocks because of the weight. We can't go over the mountains with this because we're going to, and so there's this whole thing of going up this mountain and around the windy trails and everything else with this 40-foot thing on the back of his car. And and does she get rid of the rocks? Does she not get rid of the rocks? You'll have to watch and find out. What happens when she's in the trailer cooking dinner while he's driving? You'll have to watch it and find out. Just think back to the I Love Lucy shows and all the mayhem that ensues and put it in a 90-minute movie. So that one's always good for a good laugh. When my parents were, how was it? We did when was it? When after Brad had died, my parents stayed with me for a month. They flew out from New Zealand and came and stayed with me for a month. And every night we would watch different movies. So for a month they got to see like 30 movies, which is more than they ever get to see. And so we just sat there and just watched these great movies. We did things like Secondhand Lions. We did My Cousin Vinny. We did The Long, Long Trailer. What else did we do in that one? Dirty Rotten Scoundrels. Just these really good, fun movies. We did some drama. We did Hidden Figures. They absolutely loved Hidden Figures. If you haven't seen Hidden Figures, phenomenal movie. Phenomenal. What else did we do? We did Apollo. I think we did Apollo 13. Did we do Apollo 13? I think we might have done that one too. But we didn't do any action movies because my mum's not very much into action movies. My dad loves action movies. I love action movies. Mum didn't. So we just stayed away from the action movies, but we watched all these really great movies. And The Long, Long Trailer was one of them. And my parent, growing up, there was times that we had a caravan and we would go away on family holidays in the caravan. So they could, but we only had, I think it was like maybe 18 feet, I think was the ones that we had. And we had lots of adventures in the caravans that we had. And so of course they could totally relate and then that was the cool part, is that because we had had these adventures in the caravans and growing up, we could totally relate to what was going on in this movie and the good things and the bad things about it and the reversing of a caravan. And when you've got a 40-foot caravan and you've got like 20 people standing around trying to give you directions, you're kind of hitting roses and hitting fences, and it becomes a little bit of yes. Anyway, and so we could totally relate to some of the stuff that was happening in the movie and things. But they thoroughly enjoyed that movie. But I don't think there was a movie that we watched that they didn't really enjoy that much. There was one movie that we watched where it did involve, it was I Can Only Imagine, and that's about the song called I Can Only Imagine and the story behind it. And so, of course, you're seeing that was it Mercy Me that put that song out? You're seeing their lead singer through the childhood abuse that he suffered, and Mum didn't really like that bit. And she says, "Do we have to watch this bit?" I says, "Well, it is really part of the story." She's like, "Oh, okay." So she didn't really like that bit, but she did like what happened afterwards and how he ended up writing the song, and how it became a very popular song and everything else. So, but yeah, we watched some really good movies that month. But The Long Long Trailer was one of them, and they thoroughly enjoyed that. We didn't do The Longest Day with them because it's action, shoot 'em up type of thing. But The Longest Day is a movie that I've always enjoyed watching this movie because it gives me just a hint of what they went through. And the cool part is at the beginning, yesterday we were talking about some of the facts and figures and the numbers and all of that. And they made sure that in the movie that they mentioned those numbers, how many ships that they had. They had 250,000 soldiers sitting on ships, that they needed to get off, and they're living in horrible, they talk about the conditions on board the ship and what's going on there. And, are they going to be fit enough to be able to do these landings and things? So that was really cool. So right at the beginning when they're doing all this planning and everything else. Now, when you do get the Germans talking and the French talking, you do get the subtitles because they're talking in either German or French, and they do put the subtitles up. So the only ones you hear speaking English are the Americans and the English and the Canadians and the French if they happen to know English and they're talking to the Americans, the Canadians, or the British. Great cast. It really was a kind of who's who in Hollywood, one of those types of movies. And a great cast. But I did like the fact that they tied in a lot of facts and figures from what we talked about yesterday with the number of, and I'm just trying to look around here to see if I have hang on, here it is. My pile of paper got put on the floor because I needed more space up here. They were talking about having the 7,000 ships, the 6,000 to 7,000 ships that were sitting out there with 250,000 soldiers on these ships at the time waiting to get onto the landing aircraft. They talked about the 11,000 planes that they were going to be having that were going to be flying these sorties with the paratroopers and things. And they were just bringing out the numbers. We've got, we're having to hide, like 500,000 soldiers here and and blah, 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 blah. And so they're bringing in these figures and everything else that were actual figures from the day. So I like that fact that they brought in a lot of facts and figures about the day. Then they did little stories, whether the stories were true or not, or whether it was just there to enhance the things, whether they just had they would follow one particular soldier, not one of the main characters, but they would follow one soldier and tell his little story type of thing. Whether they were based on actual people who were involved, I don't know. That part I don't know. But then all the the leaders and everything else, where you had you had somebody playing Dwight Eisenhower, you had somebody playing all the different generals and captains, and all of the officers were all played by leading actors. Like John Wayne was in there, Robert Mitchum was in there, Richard Burton was in there. Henry Fonda was in there, and they're all playing these leadership roles. And there was, who was it? One of them was playing Theodore Roosevelt, so the son of Franklin Roosevelt, though they were playing him, and he put into to the ship's captain that he wanted to land. He wanted to be on the landing craft. And of course, he's walking around in the office there like he hasn't got anything wrong with him. And he got asked about his arthritis and stuff. He goes, "Oh, no, it's not bothering me at all." As soon as he gets out of the captain's quarters, he picks up his gun and starts limping off. You mailed that together pretty well. But there's lots of really cool stories in there. And they were even when they were feeding the information back to headquarters to, about how the landings had gone and everything else, they were kept talking about Omaha, that they weren't hearing from Omaha Beach, which is the one that had the most casualties on the Allies when they were landing. And they were concerned because they hadn't heard anything, except for when the landing started. They haven't heard anything since. But the other beaches were reporting in and giving them numbers on casualties that they had with how their encroachment was going into the land and going inwards. They had paratroopers. They had these little clicker things. The problem was with the clicker things is that, as you find out in the movie, I don't know if this was actual real or if it was part of the movie. So there's a lot of things like this, like they given the paratroopers these clickers, and you do one click, and you had to, and if you heard the one click, you had to respond with two. And in one place, the guy does the one click, and he hears the two clicks, and then he hears another two clicks. And what it was the German soldier there with his rifle, pulling the rifle back and putting the hammer down, and then pulling it back up and putting it back. I should remember these bits. I used to fire at rifles. Pulling the bolt back, clicking it down, pushing it back up, and then clicking it forward. And that was the same sound as these clickers. So we had to watch out for that. But it gives you a good idea on, sorry, I didn't turn my phone off. Hang on. It gives you a good idea on, even though it's had the Hollywood touch put to it, they did include a lot of facts and figures and real information in there. And then there's times that you was, oh, was that part of it or was it not part of it? So you'd probably have to go and research a little more. The cool thing is that they put stories about people in there as well. So it wasn't just going and doing this. You actually got to see some of the personalities of these commanders and leaders and things, and how they took care of their men and did the best they could for them. And the guys just wanted to get out there and get this done with. And you even got to see the German side when they were doing all the planning, and no, they're not going to come in at Normandy. That's just, I think it was like one German officer suggested Normandy, and they're like, no, that is just so far out of there. They're going to come in over here because this is the closest, the shortest distance across the channel. They're not going to go all the way down the south there to Normandy. That's just too far to go. It doesn't even make sense or anything else. And then there's this one officer who's out there, and he's in the bunker, and he's got the binoculars out and having a look around, and he had this gorgeous German Shepherd dog. It was beautiful, a beautiful dog. It was one of the highlights of that thing. And he's like looking out, and then all of a sudden the mist out in the ocean clears, and there's just like thousands of ships that he can see. And he's on the phone there going, there's at least 5,000 ships out there. And they're like telling him, no, you're seeing things. And he's like, and then all of a sudden the bombing starts and everything else. And they're going to like, you want to come here? Can you hear this? So he was trying to tell back at command headquarters that this was happening and everything else. And they were like, no, it's not Normandy. It's not coming in at Normandy. What are you talking about? You don't know what you're talking about. And then the bombing starts, and they're sort of like, you want to come down here and check this out? So it's kind of interesting about how that was all dealt with. But yeah, I've got to do more research on this, because I love my military history and stuff. So I'm not a walking encyclopedia. I just know little bits here and there. But it was just interesting to see, and on the coding that they were using as well, and using these verses from poems to send messages across from the people, the spies that were based in France, sending it across to England sending it back. But the funniest one, I don't even know what the guy's name was, but there was this French guy. He lived in this house with his wife, and they would open the windows every morning, and they could overlook the ocean. So they were right there, and down in front of them was they were at Normandy, and some of the bunkers, they could see some of the German bunkers down there. And there was this not very petite, there was this German soldier who would come down every day with like these urns, these containers full of coffee for the German soldiers, and his top button would be undone. He'd be on this horse. Actually, I think he was actually on a donkey. And he would come down, and the French would like abuse him like crazy and tell him that he was a disgrace to his uniform, and really bullying this guy as he's riding the horse. And this guy's got absolutely no idea what the French guys are saying. And then, of course, when the bombing starts, and when he sees the ships coming in and the bombing starts, he's like dancing around inside of his house and pulling out the French flag and waving it out the window, and just basically having a party there while the Allies are bombing the beach, bombing the bunkers and everything. So there was some amusing moments in there. Sean Connery. You don't see him till later in the movie when they actually start the landings, because first you see all the, them doing the planning and getting everything organized, giving the go-ahead. Then they do the paratroopers. They even had these dummies that they dropped, and I can't remember the name of them. But the dummies would drop and just start making these noises like they were shooting. And so they would drop hundreds, I think it was like thousands of these things down before the paratroopers jumped out. So they did these dummies first, and then the paratroopers came in behind that, because they figured by then the Germans would have scattered a little bit. But you see them coming in the gliders, and they're like, brace for landing. And so they're all like got their arms linked like this, and then their feet are up and on the seat opposite them between two bodies. So there'll be a person sitting here, a person sitting there, and the feet goes in between. And because they had to brace for landing, they couldn't leave their feet. They weren't allowed to leave their feet on the floor of the plane. They had to actually lift their feet up and brace them on the seat opposite. And so you see them coming. They're basically crash landing is what they were doing, because the gliders coming in and crash landing. But when you finally get to see Sean Connery, he's so funny. Cocky Scotsman, totally cocky Scotsman. He comes out and he's all of 6'2", and in a little bit, just over 6'2", not quite 6'3". He was actually the tallest James Bond that they ever had, just as an FYI. And there was who else? There was somebody else who was 6'2" as well, but it came down to like a quarter inch or a half inch between their height when they were 6 foot. Both of them 6'2", but one was like 6'2 3/4", which I think is what Sean Connery was, that sort of thing. But anyway, so he gets all cocky in that, and he starts walking off the ramp and goes off the side of the ramp, and you remember he's 6'2", right? And he almost he gets off the ramp, and it's deeper than he anticipated. So he ends up like landing in about chest high water, and then just falling into the water, and having to bring himself up and out of that. But of course, the bagpiper went first. Bagpiper was the first one to go, and like they say, tell the bagpiper, give him the command, whatever it was he had to do. So he would then tell them what tune he was going to play, and they were just casual, and they were meant to go to some bridge, and they were a little later in arriving. But the people who were at the bridge already defending it, waiting for the backup to arrive, which was the Scots coming in, and they're going, "Are we hearing bagpipes? Do you hear bagpipes?" And they were like, "Do we hear the bagpipes? Do we not hear that?" And they look down the road there, and the bagpiper's coming down, and he's busy piping away. What are the guys behind him doing? They're just like casually walking down. They're carrying their rifles, and they're just casually just walking along behind the piper. And it's like, really? Okay. Just this cavalier attitude that these guys had. It was kind of amazing. But like I said, without being a documentary, as far as a movie goes that's based on true stuff, it's actually I actually enjoy it. It's a really good movie. They got other movies and stuff out, so I need to go and check those ones. But this is the one that I've only known of. And yesterday I went and checked, and there's a whole bunch of documentaries about the D-Day. But for entertainment wise, this was a good one. And like I said, it gives you a glimpse, just a little glimpse into what happened on that day. And yes, they have lighthearted moments in there. Like this guy, one of the American soldiers comes across another American soldier. Like he comes up, and there's this German soldier just like draped over this thing, and he kind of walks up cautiously and pushes at and like checks this guy out, and this voice from over the side said, "He's dead." And he kind of jumps, and there's a American soldiers sitting there leaning up against the wall and not being able to go anywhere. He had been gashed or shot in his leg, and the medic didn't have the equipment to wrap his leg, so he held his leg together with safety pins. But the German soldier ended up falling off the wall thing. I think he pushed him off. And then so this guy goes and sits down next to the guy that's got the injured leg and stuff. And he's been given some morphine, and he's hoping that they'll get back till the morphine wears off. But they're sitting there and they're looking at this German soldier that's like sitting there on the floor, and he goes, "You notice anything strange about that guy?" And the one that the new guy that just came in looks and goes, "No." And the guy that's been injured sits there and goes, "His boots are on the wrong feet." He had his boots on the wrong feet. And they said, well, obviously he got dressed in a hurry, didn't he? So you have little lighthearted moments in there amongst all the seriousness of the fighting and everything else as well. But it's a movie that I enjoy watching, and like I said, only because it gives me a little tiny glimpse into what happened that day with the landings and everything else, and the planning that went in. Did things go according to plan? No. With Omaha, they said they got the heaviest casualties there because the advanced teams that were supposed to take out some of the German defenses and everything else weren't able to, for whatever reason, weren't able to get there. So when they came in, there was a lot more German soldiers there than they had anticipated was going to be there. So yeah, that was part of that one. But just seeing how they got through the day and everything else. So it was they called it the longest day for a reason. And it really was the longest day because of how early they started. And, the time that they finished, where they finally secured the beaches, they were able to move inland, start the process of moving inland after securing the beaches. So it was a very long day, a lot of casualties. But yeah, so if you haven't seen that movie, just watch it, because it's a very interesting movie to watch, to give you, like I said, give you some glimpse. And you're seeing both sides as well. You see the German side, you see the Allied side. You mainly see the Allied side, but you still have the German story mixed in there with it, along with some of the French resistance as well. French resistance were awesome. Watching some of them, and they had this towards the beginning. There was a guy who's walking along, and he's got this cart full of hay, and of course the Germans are like poking the end of their rifles with the bayonets on the end into the hay to make sure there's nobody in there. And this woman comes riding up behind them, and of course dressed provocatively as they would in those days, and uses her charms on them to stop them poking in the thing. And so then the guy with the hay just walks up and grabs his papers off the soldier and takes the card off. And then the boss comes out from the guards and tells them to get everything moving. And so the girl goes off, and she goes past them and just smiles at the guy. And then he reaches back and opens up and pulls some of the hay away, and these two heads pop out of the hay. And it was a couple of the British spies who had been injured. So they take them to a place of safety that's part of the French resistance and that sort of thing too. So you get to see all sorts of stuff in this, all these little storylines going through to make up this big movie. Like I said, it's a who's who of Hollywood at the time. And just a really good movie. It just gives you a little glimpse. So that's what we've watched the last 2 nights. Tonight, where's my list? Because I totally forgot to put the year it was on there. Let's have a look here. This one. So tonight we are watching How to Marry a Millionaire, that came out in 1953. It stars Marilyn Monroe, Betty Grable, and Lauren Bacall. And it's basically about these 3 women who rent this really expensive apartment in the effort of attracting millionaires to marry them. And that's basically what it is. And I love this movie. It's got some great comedy in it. I kind of think it's a musical. Something keeps telling me in the back of my head, it's been a long time since I have seen this movie. And something in the back of my head goes, isn't this a musical? So I'm not 100% sure if it's a musical or not, but we're watching it tonight. After watching The Longest Day yesterday, I need something lighthearted and a lot shorter because we are watching, what did I do with it? Where did it go? There it is, that one. This one is an hour and a half. It's an hour and 31 minutes. And then tomorrow we're going to be watching Lawrence of Arabia tomorrow night, which is 3.5 hours, 3 hours and 37 minutes. So that's on the list for tomorrow night. So tonight is going to be the lightheartedness of How to Marry a Millionaire. It is a chick flick. It is a comedy. I have a feeling there's some singing in there as well, but like I said, it's been a while. And it's very interesting, what they set out to do and how they set out to do it and what they do to attract millionaires. And do they actually really end up with millionaires? So that becomes a very interesting part of the story. They think they're attracting millionaires, but are they really? Or is it somebody who, like them, is putting on an act in order to attract? But it's just a really cool, fun movie. And you get to see some modeling about how they did modeling back there in this in-store modeling as well. So they would have, like, the customer would come in and be sat on this chaise lounge or a couch, sofa or couch or something like that in this viewing room, and the models would come out in these outfits, and they had this stage area that they would go and pose on. They'd have these little stools that they wouldn't actually sit on. They would lean against them so the person could see the clothes, and they would come forward and do like a little modeling, like walking down a runway. They'd do sort of that sort of walking so the person could get to see all the clothes, and then the person would decide what they liked, and then they would go and try them on. So these 3 women are all in-store models, and they rent this very expensive apartment that they can't really afford, but they decide to try it anyway. And they get these benefactors that will help them and all this sort of stuff. And so they pursue their millionaires. But then at the end, you find out who married a millionaire and who didn't. But are they happy? That was the main part, is they come out happy. It's a chick flick. It's got a happy ending to it. So we're going to be watching that one tonight for an hour and a half. So just a nice, short, quick, fun movie before I tackle Lawrence of Arabia tomorrow night. So without further ado, that's it from me for tonight. Go out, have a super fantastic, sparkling evening. Oh, if you have ever seen the long trailer or The Longest Day, please put in the comments your thoughts about the movies, what you liked about them. I know that some people on my Facebook page where I put The Longest Day, because one of the questions I asked on there is, have you had an ancestor or somebody in your family that was there at D-Day? And the interest and the number of people that replied that there was a grandparent in there, a father was on landing on the beaches. These sorts of stories are starting to come out, and I'm just like, that is so cool. That they had family members and it surprised me the number of people that came in and said that they had somebody who was on the landings on the beach at Normandy and that sort of thing. So that's really cool. Yeah, I don't think, even though New Zealand was there, would have been part of the British contingency. I don't know if I've had any. I know it's not. Let's see, my grandfather fought in World War II. His brothers also served as well in the New Zealand Army. My grandmother served, his wife, my grandmother served in World War II as well, but she served at the home front in New Zealand. But her brothers were sent away to fight, but I don't think any of them were involved with Normandy. I don't know fully where they served. I'm going to go pull records on those guys and find out. So there may be a distant cousin that was in there. There may be a cousin somewhere along the way that was in there that I don't know. I would have to go and see if I can find out through other means. There's plenty of record places I can go to and check. So I'm going to go check some of the names and see if they are related. If I can find the names and they're related and that, and see if there's anybody in the family tree that was involved with Normandy. But at this point, I don't know. All I can say is not that I have discovered so far. But it's interesting. That was just reading some of the people who said, fathers, grandfathers that served during World War II and were there at Normandy on that day. So it'll be cool to go back. But anyway, that's it. I'm out of here. I'm going to go for a walk, and I don't even know. I think it's 100 and something degrees, probably about 104 or something. For those back in New Zealand, 104 is 40 degrees Celsius. So anything 104 above, you know, is in the 40s. Anything below 104 is in the 30s. I think till, yeah, it's in the 30s till like, I think it's like around 85 Fahrenheit, I think, switches to the 20s, I think. I don't remember. I think after 27 years, I would have figured this out, but nope. Anyway, I'm out of here. Go out and have a super fantastic sparkling evening. Catch you guys back here tomorrow evening at 6 p.m. Pacific. Hey, ta-da.